everybody. I think we're live. I'm going to sit here awkwardly for just a minute while I make sure that this is doing what it's supposed to be doing. Let me get the pop-out window. Where's my... There we go. Nope, that is not the button I wanted. 1 second. Here we go. Pop-out chat. Makes it easier for me to keep up with you guys. Let me refresh this. And almost ready. Make sure audio is there. Yep, we are good. Wait, audio? Yep, there's audio. Okay, where did my chat window go? I have lost it. 1 second. Thanks, Joseph. I'm not recording tonight. Tonight's a straight live stream one because I'm not actually going to accomplish much on the painting tonight, so I don't need to record that. Okay, so tonight I'm going to share the airbrush that I'm currently using, and I'm going to show you guys how to keep your airbrush from clogging. I'm going to show you how to clean it and how to quickly change your colors, and then after we go through that whole demonstration, we'll go ahead and get started on the painting that I'm working on. So one of the first things I'll show you, these are just common questions I get, so we'll just answer all these up front. This is the air compressor that I'm using. Everything that I'm using now, I've recently switched over to all of these products by Grex. I saw them at I was demonstrating Inktense over in Salt Lake City for this big art convention a couple of years ago, and I saw their products there. I tested them. I'm not gonna lie, I like that they're green. I think it looks pretty with the teal in my studio. I'm that person who, when someone's like, oh, you got a new car? What kind of car did you get? I got a black one. Like, that's my mindset. So there you go. But with this one, the things that are really amazing about this airbrush is that they're completely interchangeable. So like with one airbrush, I can switch to a 2mm, 3, 5, 7, all these different needles in one gun. So I don't have to have a whole bunch of different guns in order to accomplish that, which is actually pretty cool. So let's see. Okay, I'm reading the questions. I'm apologizing. I'm probably going to ignore a bunch of questions until a few minutes. I'm going to go through this really quick. So if you're asking questions, I'm not intentionally ignoring you right now. So with the compressor, just to give you an idea, there's my hand. My hands aren't terribly big. That's how big the compressor is. I'm 5'4", so my hands aren't, they're not big hands. And so that gives you, I think, a pretty good idea size-wise of what size this is. You've got the little control where you can see what your PSI is here, which my old one was up at my easel. It was easier for me. This one is down because I keep it on my compressor on the floor, so it's harder for me to see. So I'm still getting used to that. You can adjust your air pressure by the little black nozzle thing here. You just turn it one way or the other, which I don't really want to adjust because I like where it's set right now. It's not terribly loud. It's quieter than my hair dryer, if that gives you an idea. And you'll hear it running through the video as I'm using it. It's an automatic, so right now it's not on. Now it's on. But once I start using the gun, it will automatically come on as needed. And it's going to slide away because it's on a towel. But there you go. So that gives you an idea with the air compressor. It has a little handy thing that you can put your gun in, which for me is kind of useless because it sits on my floor, not practical. So that we're going to go ahead and move down here, but I'm really liking that air compressor. So we will get him out of the way. I'm going to have to readjust that later. So the gun, going through this, and one thing I want to show you, actually, I'll show you how I'm setting it up on the easel in a minute. I'm getting ahead of myself. So here is the gun itself. This one comes with, well, mine didn't. I'm dumb. I bought the one without the rubber grippy thing and then had to buy it separately and ended up paying way too much. If I would have just bought the kit with the airbrush, the compressor, the one that's leaked in my video description, I would have saved a lot of money. But because I'm a genius, I bought everything individually because I didn't plan on buying all of this. I got one item like, well, now I want the compressor to go with it. Now I need a new hose. Now I need this. Now, it ended up costing a bit more. But this little thing I love. I'm not in love with the little grip on up here. I generally just take that off. This is more comfortable for me to work, but it is extremely comfortable to hold. I love the little handly guy. I worked with it for a couple of days without it, and then I ordered it because this actually, and this comes off, but this has a little metal thing here, which my other airbrush, this was my old Iwata Neo. This one, see how it's just straight? And the way I hold the gun is like that. Now, everyone's going to hold it a little bit different, but that's what's comfortable for me. With that one, what was happening is my finger was pushing on that metal thing. So once I got this, it is now the most comfortable airbrush to hold. I'm in love with this. So going through I'm going to talk about cleaning it. One of the main or huge thing that will keep your airbrush from clogging is after every single use. Break down the whole thing and clean it. If you saw the video I posted on Instagram today, I showed the little cup that has my cleaning solution in it. I have this little cup and I fill it with 50%. I use the Iwata airbrush cleaner because you can get a big, like huge 32-ounce thing for fairly inexpensive on Amazon. And I fill it about half with that, half with water. And when I'm done airbrushing, let me turn the compressor off before I take this off. When I'm done airbrushing, I disconnect the hose. I'm gonna pull this little guy off. I'm going to first take, and I'll do a full video going through this a little bit better in the future. Let me move this to make sure I'm on camera with this. The joys of live streaming. Let's see. So I'm going to take, usually I take a softer toothbrush. This is actually the cleaner or the brush that comes with the Grex cleaner kit thing. I don't normally need one this stiff, but you're going to use the airbrush cleaner that you put in the cup and scrub down the outside, get that all nice and clean, and then you're going to start pulling everything apart. You're going to take off the cup. That you're going to clean out again with those little brushes. And the Grex airbrush, I sound like this is an advertisement for them. Honestly, I bought all this stuff myself. I just like it, so I'm sharing with you. But you can get all of this on Amazon, the different cleaning tools. And there are, like, you don't have to go with Grex. There are other ones. I just like the kit that I linked there because it came with all this stuff. But you've got these little tools here. This is the one that I usually will use to clean out the inside of the cup. And here. Now, when you're painting, you're going to have, the airbrush paint is going to start drying in the cup around the edges. That's why when I take everything down and clean it, I soak it overnight in that cleaning solution, the 50% airbrush, or the airbrush cleaner, 50% water. I soak it overnight, and that's going to really get everything off. And that was the biggest change I made in keeping my airbrush from clogging constantly, because it was clogged all the time. That was on my Iwata Neo before I got this one. This one I've been careful with cleaning and keeping up to date. It doesn't clog anymore, and I've got other tips on clogging too, so that's coming. But I'll clean that, stick that in the cup. Everything goes in the cup except for the needle. So then you're going to pull apart the back end of the airbrush. We're going to remove the needle first. So I just take this little screw guy, I'll just loosen that, slide the needle out. Now this needle is my 2mm. This, it's got lube on it already, but now it's on my hands. This one you be careful with. If you're using the 2mm needle, it bends so easy. I actually bent this and I don't even know how. And I was able though to very gently with my fingernails kind of straighten it back out. And so it's good. I didn't ruin it, but and they're not cheap. That needle, it's a whole needle kit. It's the needle and it's the little needle nozzle guy. That is like $40 on this one, at least on Amazon. Don't, just be super careful. Like that's one of the biggest things you want to be careful with. So the next thing, we're going to pull that off, same thing, clean it. And this one is attached by a magnet, which I love because I actually take it off while I'm working and only put it down. When I put the airbrush down, I'll put that cap back on. This is going to protect that needle from getting bent while you're working. But while I'm painting, I don't want it. I don't like it on the airbrush. So that gets cleaned off, same thing. And you can use your little brush tools. You'll dip that in your solutions, just scrub that out, make that nice and clean, and then throw that in the cup. We're going to remove this front end. Same thing, clean it off, throw it in the cup. You're then going to use this little wrench guy that it comes with to remove the needle nozzle. Now, be careful with this. When you put this back together, you're going to want to tighten it like really good. You're going to feel, I should rephrase that. You're going to feel like you want to tighten it. Make sure it's on there. Don't tighten it too much because you can strip that. I did that on my old Tamiya airbrush and had to have it, the airbrush, Coast Airbrush guys fix it for me. But you'll remove that. That's just, I loosen it with this, but then I just use my fingers to unscrew the end here. Where did I get my airbrush from? I got mine from Hobbytown. My husband was in there buying some models, or the Gundam models that you build, and they had these, and I was bored, and so I was like, you know what? I've really been wanting to get one of these. It was a little bit of an impulse buy, but not really because I've been wanting one for the last 2 years. So anyway, that's where I got that. But Amazon, dickblick.com, those are the places that I bought. Those are the 3 places that I bought all the parts that I needed. So you pull that off, And now when normally my everyday like cleaning, I don't pull the rest of this out. This whole piece you can pull out. Every once in a while I'll pull it all apart and soak and clean that too if it were like if I spilled paint all over. But normally I like for everyday cleaning, I pull that out and then use, again, you would dip this in the solution, use your brushes to clean that out really good. Now some of the cleaners, the brushes that you can get, I actually have a set there. It's like metal. It's all only made out of metal. I don't recommend those, and I don't use that one myself because you're scrubbing metal on metal and it's just a bad idea. With these, they're softer bristles, so it's a little bit more gentle. Well, actually it's a lot more gentle, and that's what I use to clean those out with. And then I just set the gun in the cup like that, and so I'll have it filled maybe about right around here, and I soak that overnight. The next morning, I pull everything out, go back through as needed with these, and you'll see little flakes. You will think you had everything clean, and there'll be flakes from the inside of the gun that came out. So it's really, really helpful to soak it overnight like this, but just, in the morning, pull everything back up, or put out, wipe everything down, dry it, and put everything back together. So that's what I'm going to do now is put this back together. So the first thing that I'm going to do, there's a couple of different ways that you can put the needle in. One, you could put the needle in now. That way you're not sliding through the back end of it. So let's actually just go ahead and do it that way because I don't have the caps in yet. So we'll slide it backwards into this. Now, the other tip, I don't have it out right now, but get yourself some Airbrush Lube. I use the one by Posh. I've also used, I forget what the other brand is. They're all about the same. They're fine. But the Posh one was on Amazon, so it's convenient to get, and it's fairly inexpensive. So with the, what I do, I always lube the front half of the needle, and then when I do a really good cleaning on the airbrush, I will lube basically any metal part that rubs up against the metal part, you can lube that, and it just keeps everything in good condition. So we're going to put this back in there because this already has lube on it. It's all over my fingers now. And I'm going to slide that back, and I'm actually going to slide mine back a little farther. So now it's just the reverse. Actually, I'm going to pull that back even more. I'm going to put that needle nozzle back on. This is slippery because I normally do this before I lube everything, but that was already together. Now this is where I'm talking about with tightening this, just a little bit with that wrench. Don't overdo it or you risk stripping it. Now this one feels more solid. This needle nozzle is definitely more solid than the Tamiya that I stripped, but you don't want to do it. Just be careful. It doesn't take a lot to tighten that. Next, we're going to take the cap here, put that back on. I'm going to now push that needle forward, and I don't know if you'll see on the video, but just the tip of that comes out. While holding that forward, I'm going to tighten this little nut back here. That keeps the needle going or able to move forward and come back. If you don't have it pushed all the way forward and you don't tighten this, when you pull your little trigger here back, the needle's not going to move. This is gripping and holding the needle into place. So make sure that you get that in there. Now, one of the things, Jesse just said, my nozzle broke as well. Oh, well, I was such a noob, but now I have a better airbrush. Now, one of the things you do want to watch when you're buying an airbrush, a cheap airbrush, one of the biggest differences between a cheap airbrush and a more expensive, like from a reputable company airbrush, is that the cheap ones, they work fine usually for like 1, 2, 3 uses. They break quickly, and then you can't easily get the parts. Being able to get replacement parts is a big deal because you're going to need those over time. Whether you broke a needle, you broke whatever, there's always going to be some reason you need a replacement part. So you watch that when you get some of these cheap ones, that's not possible. I mean, it ends up being a waste of money because one, they break really easily, really fast. Like I said, they'll work right away. And that's what it's kind of deceiving because you'll read through like eBay reviews and everyone's like, it's great. It works great. Yeah. They left a review after they used it the first time, the second time. They'd already left the review, and then 3, 4, 5 times later, 6 times later, or uses later, it broke. Well, the positive review is already there. So it makes it a little deceiving, I think. It gives you the impression that these air guns are getting good reviews where they're not necessarily holding up as long as they should. I mean, my Iwata Neo, I've been using that for years. 8 years and not taking care of it. That's the best part. And it's still, I mean, a good one. This one is new. It's Grex. It should be fine. It should last a long time too. We're going to remember now, right now, that needle is exposed. I can touch that with my finger. I can easily bend that. And that's the big thing you've got to watch with these needles. So I'm going to put that needle cap right back on there. And I love that that is magnetic. Put the back on this. Screw that into place. Now, one of the things, this little thing back here, this little screw guy. Now, most airbrushes, yeah, I'm showing you the Grex, but most airbrushes are going to be designed exactly, really close to the same. So, let's see, Dania said, are all parts available on Amazon? Not all. Like, I wasn't able to get this on Amazon. I had to get that from an airbrush company, Midwest Airbrush Company, I think I got that one from. The needles are, the cleaners are, almost everything else is on Amazon. I think this was the only thing I could not find on Amazon. So, but this, okay, so this little nut guy, when you screw this, when you tighten and loosen it, it will control how far you're able to pull the trigger back. So if you're doing something super tiny and you're afraid you're going to slip and pull back and splatter paint all, you know, big, huge burst of paint comes out, tighten this up so that this doesn't move back as far. Let's see. I think mine's super loose right now. There we go. Now mine doesn't do anything. Let's loosen that a little bit more because I'm working on fine detail at the moment. So see, it just comes back a little bit instead of all the way. So you're not able, it's like putting a guard on it. You're not able to just blast a ton of paint out. So let's go on to, we've got, put the cut back on. We've got this guy needs to go back on. And that just slides right on. Now, there's another item that you can get for this that turns this into, like, it's a bigger handle down here for your grip, your fingers. Actually, do I even have it over here? Let me see if it's in my handy toolbox. This is handy for all your airbrush parts. This is where I keep everything. All my cleaner or extra cleaner brushes, everything goes in here. My extra needles, everything. Let me see if I've got, okay, I do. This is one thing. Now this one, to be fair, is I didn't realize I was getting a generic version of this. This would slide on, so it goes on the bottom part of your gun. This wasn't comfortable for me. This was definitely not a fit for how I hold the airbrush. So, I mean, I only paid like $5 because it was the knockoff version. I thought it was the real one. The real one is like $30. If you paint like I do, it's... go with this one. I love this holder way more than the other one. But the like genuine manufacturer, whatever, what is it called? The made by Grex one. It's shaped exactly the same. And from how most of us hold the airbrush, most of us aren't going to find that to be as useful or comfortable as this one here. So let's move that back up on the screen. And I think that's it. Now I also have, like I said, this airbrush, one of the things that makes this unique, you're able to switch out. There's my number 5 needle, and it has, you switch the nozzle and you switch the needle. So, I mean, it's a whole kit of pieces for each size needle, so I don't need a different gun for different sizes. Oh, thank you so much, Undecided Mike. He says, I am starting to get back my creativity back, looking to get started on drawings again. Watching your videos helps my motivation and inspired me. That's awesome. Thank you so much. So we've got all of these different ones. Like I said, I've got a 2, 3, and a 5. They also make a 7. They also make a fan that's kind of like a straight nozzle thing. So you're going to get more of a thicker line, which would be great for bigger backgrounds for me. I don't know if I'm going to end up using that much, but it is very, it's really nice because like I said, this one airbrush and this one, I think I paid, I want to say it was about $140 because I got it without the little grippy guy and then had to buy the grippy guy separately. Trust me, get the one with the grippy guy. So maybe like $160, right around there. But you don't have to buy a different gun for each needle size. And that's very, very unique to this. I don't know. Maybe there's other guns that do it. I don't know of any. That's one of the things that's really cool about this specific one. And besides the fact that it's green, because, you know, I liked the green. One of the main things that drew me to it is the ability to change out those needles and to have all of these parts be so, they're very easy to replace. So, let's put that away. And we are going to get started now. I've got more tips on keeping your airbrush from getting clogged, but that would be the first one. Make sure that that is completely clean every single time you airbrush. Don't do what I used to do, and this was one of my problems. I would airbrush, and I would run the airbrush cleaner through it so that no paint was coming through, and be like, okay, it's clean, and set it to the side. So much paint was building up inside my airbrush. My Iwata Neo, that was the main one that I was using for so many years, and that guy, I soaked it on and off for about 3 days, I think. I don't know. I kept having to soak it, remove everything, clean it out, soak it, and just continuously do that in order to get that clean. And I just kept getting these chunks of paint. I'm like, no wonder it was always clogged. I should clean this better. So now every single day that I paint, this gets torn down like I just showed you and soaked in that cleaning, 50% cleaning solution, 50% water, soak it overnight, and I've had no problem since. And then I've got more tips on cleaning. So one thing I want to show you, we're going to do the Blair Witch camera roll here, so I apologize for the movement. This was another piece that I bought. This one is also by Grex, if you can see it. Here's the airbrush holder, all my paper towels that I keep under my easel, but the airbrush holder. This one can hold 5 airbrushes. You can set them here, although my easel obviously in the way, so I actually set the airbrush like this, or you can set them in this little holder here, and that's where I've got my Neo. I put my Neo here not because I have, like, I'm probably never going to use that again unless something like I needed to get a part for this one, but it felt like it had a place for all the airbrushes and it looked fancy, so I just have it on display now on my easel, which is completely pointless. So yeah, let me put this stuff away. We're going to close that. I've got to switch locations for my camera really quick, and we will get onto the painting, and I'm going to show you one of the coolest items that has absolutely helped while I'm painting. Like, even if my airbrush is clean, sometimes you will still have your gun will get clogged while you're working. I don't have that happen anymore, and I'm going to show you why. Let me put this away. Another huge tip when you're airbrushing, do not wear clothes you like. If you are wearing something cute, you are guaranteed to get paint on it. Pro tip there. Always, old t-shirt and jeans basically, or sweats or whatever, anything I don't care about getting paint on, because I will inevitably, the only time I will spill airbrush paint on myself is when I am dumb and I'm wearing something that, like a brand new hoodie, I didn't want paint all over, but I'm like, oh no, I'm good, I won't make a mess. I don't know how I do it, but this medium, yeah, wear an old t-shirt. So let me get this put away. Oh, crap. I meant to show you guys another thing. I'll have to do it at a different camera angle. Okay, let me see if this is where we want it. And that's not blinding at all. Let's see. Okay, so this part up here, I'm not even going to be working on tonight. We're just working down here, so I think that will work. I am at a weird angle, so it's going to look like my airbrush is at an, like, seriously at an angle. I'm always going to be straight on 90 degrees, so there we go. And Nick says old t-shirt and jeans are my good clothes. Okay, my eye itches. So we've got this. Did this camera go okay? Now that I move stuff. Rearranging the studio. Okay, so when I clean colors, what I do, I have my little water well here. You can see the water in there. I only put a little bit of water in here because you don't need it full. You're not rinsing brushes. I just put enough water in there that when I dump the excess airbrush paint, it's not going all, it's not sticking and drying to the bottom of this. This makes it easier to clean out. What I do, you know what? I'm trying to think of the best way to do this, because this was one of the stages that was supposed to happen on the other table I was just at. But what I do is take, let's say I've got paint in here. I'm going to tip this, I guess I can do it to the side because I'm only going to spray water. But there, if I had been painting, I want to switch that color out. Now, first, don't put very much paint in there. It takes very, very little. A little bit goes a long way. Unless you're covering like a whole wall, something very large, you just don't need a huge amount of paint in here. And that was a big, big mistake for me. This, just like with what I'm working now, it's honestly just a couple of drops of paint. But what I will do is, let's see if I can move. Oh, a towel. I'll put that on my lap so water runs onto the towel. So what I'm going to do is dump this. This will be dumped over that water well I just showed you. I'm going to take a spray bottle and I'm going to make that right. Squirt this in so it just pours out. And I let that pour out then into that extra bucket. But the spray bottle where it's like that heavy stream coming through, that has been the best way for me to like clean out as much as possible. And then I run the airbrush. Oop, this is not turned on. I will run it through, get as much paint out as possible. And the next step is to use an airbrush cleaner. So the one I have right now is the Createx. I actually have been using the Grex one too, but I figured I may as well use up all my Createx. I bought these just because they were easy to pick up at Hobby Lobby. They carried them there, and I used to use the 40% coupon. They raised the prices. These are were like $9 or $9.99 last time I saw it. So I've switched. I've been using the Grex one. All the airbrush cleaners, honestly, they're about the same. So whichever airbrush cleaner you want to use, go ahead and then after you've cleaned out the paint from that, run this through in between colors. If I'm going, let's say I've been using yellow and I'm switching to red, I don't need to run the airbrush cleaner through it. The red is much stronger. But if I am moving from like black paint and now I want to go to white paint, I'm going to run water through it like I just showed you, where I'm spraying it and letting the paint fall back out the top of the cap into the bucket. And then I'm going to run my airbrush cleaner through it until no color is coming out. But you'll get to where you're going through that really quickly. It does not take long to switch out your colors of paint. My next tip for not clogging your airbrush, this stuff is amazing. Get yourself some Airbrush Flow Improver. Oh my gosh. So the type of paint that you're using is going to make a difference. If you've been watching me for very long, you know I used my Createx airbrush paint a lot, mostly because it was available at Hobby Lobby. I was always there. I could just pick it up there. But that paint is meant to go through an airbrush that has a 5 needle or higher, which means a very large needle, which means you're not getting a lot of detail with a 5. I mean, you can guess, you can, there are tricks to it, but mostly you're not, like for me, I'm not using a 5. So I was thinning it down with water to make it go through the airbrush enough. Createx just clogs. It just does. If a flow improver will absolutely help. Using an actual paint reducer will help. But I found an easier way than all of that is just to use better paint. So the paint that I'm using, and Createx is fine. It depends on what you're using it for. For this, I don't need it for that. I kept all my paints. I still may use them for backgrounds. But when I get into smaller details where I want a bit more control, my favorite paints are, my absolute favorite right now are Goldens. They're high flow. This paint, I like the nozzle. I like everything about these paints, and they have tons of colors. I've got a ton of them. The other one is the Aero Flash. This is the Holbein. Theirs is also a really good, and I don't have problems with the clogging there. And what I do is I put first 1 or 2, usually because I'm not usually putting much paint in there, I'll put like 1 drop of flow improver in the airbrush first. Then I put my color on top of it. I'm not sitting there stirring or mixing. That's all you need to do. Comes out fine. My next tip, always test it, well, as you can see what I do here, test it on a paper towel, an old piece of paper, something. Test your airbrush somewhere else before you start spraying on your paper. Can't tell you how many times you'll think that everything's set right and you'll go to pull, start using it and it just splatters everywhere, or something will happen. Test it always. Always, your first brush stroke, I always test on a paper towel that I keep there. I just reuse the same ones over and over again. So let's see. Shazam said, if you use the airbrush every day, how often should you strip it down? I just got one, not game to take it apart. I missed your beginning today. Every single time that you use it, every time, tear it down and clean it every single time, without exception. If you want your airbrush to clog, don't bother. Then just clean it when you feel like it. But if you don't want to deal with the clogged airbrush all the time, every single time you use it, tear it down. And you'll get good. You'll get fast at it. What I'm doing right now, I'm doing it on camera, so it's slow. But when I'm doing it on my own, it's quick. You go through the tear down and set down. You'll feel kind of like, how you watch those like movies where they're pulling apart a gun really fast and they put it together and it's like, whoa, they are fast at that. You will be like that with your airbrush. You will go through, you just right away. But I can't stress that enough. Every time, tear the entire thing apart, at least the front half of it. The back half, like I showed, you can back up the video and see that. The back half, I will sometimes leave intact unless for some reason I got dirty and paint got in the back end of it. But normally it's the front half. Everything out of the front. The nozzle, the needle nozzle, the caps, everything comes apart and gets washed out. So really, 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 really important. So let's see. Do I use the spray out pot? I actually do. I have one right here. So this is another, and I don't have this in my video description, but you can see there's a little bit of liquid in there. So this is where usually if I'm cleaning the airbrush and just letting, cleaning it out, getting rid of the paint that's in it, I don't just spray into the air because it goes everywhere and then you have to dust everything and you've got a layer of blue, because I use a lot of blue, will be all over all your furniture. It doesn't ruin anything. It just dusts right off. But I mean, you don't even have to scrub. It just wipes off with your hand. It's easy to clean, but this helps. These little pots, what you do, when I've got paint in here that I'm cleaning out, I'm just going to stick that in there and run the paint through. Let it fill through this, and that's going to keep everything in here, and you don't end up with airbrush dust everywhere. If you are airbrushing where you're using like a big background and airbrush dust is filling your room because you're like spraying like crazy, wear a mask. I made myself sick. When I first started airbrushing, this was probably like, gosh, it must have been around 2002. I look around my apartment. I've been airbrushing for hours. It was something huge. I look around my apartment and I've got this layer of smoke, airbrush smoke. I mean, it was like a cloud. It was bad. And it took me quite a few days to start feeling better. I had ingested so much of that paint, and it's like, it's non-toxic. It's fine, right? No, not when it coats your lungs so that you can't receive oxygen, because airbrush paint is coating the lungs and preventing that from happening. I was coughing up green colors for days, and I was dizzy because I wasn't getting enough oxygen. It was bad. I should have gone to the doctor, but I didn't because I didn't. So, like if you're using a lot, I don't have one over here, but wear a mask is a good idea. Now for what I'm doing today, I'm working on tiny details. There's really nothing floating around. I'm not making a huge mess. If you find yourself, if you've been airbrushing and you find that you're like sneezing green or blue, like blue paint that you were using or black is coming out when you sneeze, you can check and this sounds gross, I know, but check the inside of your nostrils with like a Q-tip. So if there's color in there, you should have been wearing a mask. That is a pretty good sign. You should not be having color go up your nose. So that's kind of like how just a good way to be careful about, just be safe. Even when you're using the paints, some of these are not non-toxic, but most of them are non-toxic. And even then, like I said, all the ones I was using that day were non-toxic, but it's still like, I messed myself up pretty bad by not being able to get enough oxygen. So moving onto the painting, I may have forgotten something. We'll come back to it. Now, if you have asked the question before now and you're waiting for me to answer, I'm not going to scroll back up. Just please type it again and make sure you use the highlight, the @Lachri Fine Art. If it doesn't highlight in orange, I'm not going to see it. So, but feel free again to type that in. Valencia Bell said, do you only your airbrush for backgrounds? No, well, normally yes. And so I'm super out of practice for fine detail because I normally do only use it for backgrounds. And I'll show you what I mean here. So let's pull this one up. This is a tiger you guys probably saw recently. The entire background of that was done with an airbrush. So it's very soft, very out of focus. And everything else was hand paint. Well, part of the foreground was airbrush, but if you saw the video, you know it wasn't necessary. I painted over it, but everything else is painted by hand with a traditional paintbrush. And what happens when you do that is you get this really nice, like super in focus on the subject, and the background's out of focus, and you just create a lot of depth. So that's the main reason I've been using an airbrush for all of these years. I've been airbrushing since, I want to say it was around 1999. I got my first one from 1999 or 98. Might have been 98. I don't know. It was a long time ago. Let's see. This is another example. This one is done with the airbrush on the background and then colored pencil for the birds and the leaves and the berries. So again, you can see how you get a lot of depth this way. And if you are brand new to an airbrush, if you're thinking this looks hard, like what I'm doing now, this starts getting more complicated. But if you're just brand new, this type of background, so easy to do. You will have something that looks pretty much just like it your first day. I mean, it is that easy. So anything out of focus, that's the easy stuff to do with an airbrush. So that's all you want an airbrush for. Don't be afraid. It is super, super easy to do. Let me pull another thing that I've used the airbrush for. Let's see, I think I've got the elephants, if I can find it. Give me just a second. There it is. So this is another effect that I use the airbrush for. You can see how it's the mist going across the elephants. Where I painted the elephants by hand, everything was like really, really harsh, and then I just took the airbrush with some opaque paints and that gray color and went right over it, and it set them back. Now again, I've created this atmosphere, super easy. This is another thing, your first day of airbrushing, you can do that effect. I mean, it's very, very easy. What gets more challenging and takes a lot more practice with the airbrush is when you start getting into any finer detail. And for me, I am super out of practice. Mine is not as fine as I'm going to want it to be. So I'm going to go back through with a colored pencil over this to sharpen things up, which is what I started doing on the roses. I'll end up doing that again down here. Everywhere is going to need that too. But that's kind of I don't want to call it a cheat. I mean, using colored pencil with airbrushes is a good technique, but it's one of the things that I'm definitely going to be doing on this one because, like I said, I'm pretty out of practice for trying to do anything where the majority of it is done with an airbrush. But it's a very versatile tool. You can use it just for backgrounds. You can use it to create special effects. Like when I did a polar bear and I had the breath coming out, there, I'm going to use the airbrush. That's going to give me an effect that I can't get otherwise. I mean, I can get kind of close, but it's not the same. So let's see. Let me see if I'm missing some questions here. I see some orange popping up. Let's see. Mary Clark said, I thought I would tune in to check about the use of airbrush since I am asthmatic. I won't be using it. Yeah, it would probably... And the only way you'd be able to use it is if you got a good air mask. Like, you can get the ones that are like super good, not the cheapy little papery type, but like a good mask. You would be able to, but if you were comfortable painting that way. Let's see. Woot said, are you able to use liquid watercolor concentrate in an airbrush? Yeah. Some people will try to use oil-based paints. I don't recommend that because then you're running paint thinner through it. It's too harsh. It's too thick. And you wouldn't even need it. Oil paints on their own can get an airbrush look without an airbrush. So just because of the nature of wet into wet and the way that you blend. So I don't know why anyone would want to, but I always get asked that. But yeah, your water-based paints, like I used to take my acrylics, my Liquitex Basics, and thin those down with water till it was about the consistency of milk and feed that through my airbrush. Not the most time, you waste a lot of time doing it and you get paint that didn't get mixed all the way and it clogs and it's kind of a pain. But I have done that. Any of your water-based medias, technically I could do it with Inktense. I could do it with anything water-based like that. But I like the results better with the airbrush paint. Undecided Mike said, I thought when you sneeze out colors, it meant you were turning into a unicorn. No, well, if you deprive your body from enough oxygen like I did, you'll think you're turning into a unicorn. You'll be dizzy enough to think all kinds of stuff's happening. Thanks, Valencia. Whoops, scrolled too far. Let's see. Rick said, have you looked into ultrasonic cleaners like for jewelry? I read a lot of people do that to clean their airbrush parts and they're pretty cheap. Yes, you can. But you have to make sure that it's a stronger one than the one. I have one, but it's kind of weak. I may end up investing in a higher power one. Mine was a super cheap one. I just got it for like my rings and my earrings. But yeah, if it's strong enough, that's a really, really effective way to go. So yes, that would absolutely work. Right now, my cup with cleaner overnight works just fine, but that's probably one of the things I'll end up getting eventually. Right now, I spent way too much money on these supplies, so I had to cut myself off of spending. My art account is currently closed. Let's see. We've got, Stefan said, when you use airbrush, the background for colored pencil, what paint do you use for wax pencil? Okay, so that's a really good question. Always, if you're going to use your wax-based pencils, you always airbrush first, finish the painting or whatever airbrushing you're going to do, and then put colored pencil over that, because you can put wax and oil-based products like your colored pencils on top of a water-based product, which is your airbrush paint, but you can't do the reverse. So like for me, I was playing around with, I had not used this paper before. This is a Canson Mi-teintes art board. Wonderful for airbrush. Right now it is my favorite board for airbrush. But you can't, I did the roses and then I wanted to see how well the colored pencil stuck on top. I really had no idea. So I started using the colored pencil. I should have waited because I can't go back over those with the airbrush now. They have wax pencil. If I go over with the airbrush, that's a water base on top of wax. You can't do it. So, I mean, you can, but it's not going to be archival. So always wait to use colored pencil until you're done with the airbrush. In this case, I mean, I'm not going to sell this. This is a practice piece. I've got tears on the paper I messed up, which I'll be talking about in the full review. The frisket that I used didn't play nicely with this paper. So, the first frisket I tried, I should say. So yeah, you just want to make sure that you're using whatever airbrush paint you want. Comart's good. That will never clog. That, I swear that stuff does not clog airbrushes. But Comart's really good. And that is one that you can actually, some of them you can erase and lift off. For me, I don't use it too often because I also use this with my acrylic paintings. And with my acrylic paintings, now acrylic painting, I can airbrush, go on with the acrylic painting, and then airbrush on top of that. You can go back and forth. They're both water-based. It's just with the colored pencil, the wax and oil base, that you're not going to airbrush on top of that. Hope that makes sense. But I was going somewhere with this. The masking fluor, I don't know. I'm sure I'll remember. So let's see. Brent said, my favorite part of this painting so far is the clear glass bottles. Thanks. Yeah, it's got some work to do. I have a tendency, now this is one of my biggest problems with airbrushing. I will almost always go too dark. I don't know what it is with me and that black paint. I'm like, ooh, black paint everywhere. Too much. Lisa, lay off the black paint. Use too much. Like, this is supposed to be black, but I've got to lighten, like, my dark is way too much contrast in there. Actually, I think it looks better on the live stream than it does in person. I shouldn't tell you guys that. I should let you think it looks better than it does. Let's see. Lou said, hi Lisa, I bought an airbrush to try wet into wet blending and I'm looking for a relatively cheap air compressor. What would you suggest? All I've personally used is my Stormforce, which you can find the link for that on my website under, if you go to acrylic painting supplies, and now my Grex airbrush or compressor. I don't really recommend getting something super cheap for an air compressor. Well, for any of the airbrushing things like I was talking about at the beginning of the video, they just don't last. So you end up having to replace the whole thing too often. I mean, it's normal to have to replace parts here and there. Like there's a little hose on my, it's like 20-year-old, yeah, it's about 20 years old now. My Stormforce air compressor. That one, I've had to replace one of the hoses a couple of times. That's it. Like a good compressor is worth, I would rather see somebody save the money. Don't get one now, save up a little bit longer and get something that's going to last you versus something that is going to break. But what I would recommend doing, call an airbrush place like Coast Airbrush in Anaheim. Is it Midwest Airbrush? I think was the one I ordered some of this other stuff from. But if you call and ask them which air compressors they recommend, let them know what you're going to use it for, let them know what your budget is and see what they recommend because they're going to be familiar with a bigger variety and hopefully aren't selling crappy ones. I worry about the ones that you find on eBay and that you find online a lot. Like I was saying earlier, they may work right out of the box, but too soon, you're out that money. So let's say you spent $50 on it. That $50 could have gone towards the $200 one that would have the Grex one was $200. I forget what the Stormforce, I think I paid more for that one, but that would last a lot longer. So just keep that in mind when you are buying those. Thank you, Valencia. Let's see. Sulu said, a lot of tutorials are saying to use Windex as cleaner. Any info on this? I've never done it. I don't like the smell of Windex, so that's not going to be a fit for me. The airbrush cleaner is fair. I mean, it doesn't cost that much. I mean, it's obviously more than Windex. I've heard people say not to use it. I've heard people say it was fine. I'm just going to go with the supplies that the manufacturers recommend. That just seems safer to me in this case. So, like I said, I've never used it myself, so I'm sure it works. I'm concerned. I don't know what it's made out of, if that would be like weird long-term, if there would be damage done to the airbrush because of it. I don't know. I'm just more comfortable using the actual the stuff made for airbrushes. Okay. I put way too much. I put an extra tea bag in my tea tonight. It's blueberry herbal tea. Yeah, it's too strong. Okay, let's get started. So what was I working on this one next? Now, I am going to have to come through. I need to lighten some of this. I'm actually going to switch to gray. No, if you're you're just getting started with airbrushing and you're trying to do details and stuff, I would recommend do a painting in just black and white, like opaque black and white, just to get used to the gun. Right now, and I wish I would have even done that for myself because you've seen me do where I'll do something in black and white and then glaze color on top. You can do that with airbrushing. Super easy, gives you great results, and it's way easier than trying to choose colors, switch colors constantly and back and forth. And because you're getting used to cleaning out the gun, it's a lot easier if you did it in black and white or like a sepia tone first and then put your color on top. So that is one thing you'll see me do the next time I airbrush. So what I'm going to do, I should have a neutral gray in here somewhere. I'm going to tone down some of my black. There's shading gray. That actually might work. Where's my other one? Give me a second. Yeah, here we go. Neutral gray. So I'm going to, actually, I don't even think I've used this one. Let me open that. So when they're new, there's at least with these ones are with the golden high flow, there's a little foil thing you got to remove. Come on. Sometimes they're really, really hard. There we go. That out of the way. Make sure you shake these up really well because sometimes whatever's in there will separate. The other thing, make sure that you remember to screw this all the way down when you're done painting. I have let stuff dry out by not doing that all the time. So, you know, tips. So first thing I'm going to do here is take my Airbrush Flow Improver. This is Vallejo, if I'm saying that right. I don't know, works good. I just need 1 drop. I'm not going to use much of this paint. Although, actually, I'm going to put 2 drops because I just dropped that on the side. There we go. Now, I want to make sure that this goes down inside there first. It'll kind of thin out as I'm putting the paint in there. I just need a couple of drops of this, or maybe 3 or 4. Did the same thing, ran it to the side. I'm going to put a couple more. Okay. Close that up. I'm going to test it first on my paper. And what I'm going to do now, one thing, the angle I have my camera coming right now is from the side so that you can see what I'm doing. The problem is it makes it look like I'm spray painting, like I'm at an angle, and I'm not. I'm always in a 90-degree thing, and move your whole body with it. Don't be like painting up here with your arms stretched there and, oh, you know, stretched over here. Try to stay in front of it. Try to stay even. When you first start airbrushing, it's going to feel very awkward. You're going to feel like you will never understand, you know, get good at this. It's not a natural thing to hold, and it's going to take time for you to get used to. The more you paint, it'll become to where this is basically an extension of your arm. Like, it'll be super easy to control, but that takes practice. It's not like a magical, when you first pick it up, you're going to feel like, I'm not good at this, forget it. Don't. Everybody feels that. You know, that's a normal, it's always going to feel awkward, basically. Okay, make sure I'm cut up. There we go. So, I want to tone down my black. I'm just going to use a little bit of paint here. There we go. And now it's not the black. I actually like the black for the wire bars here, which I will sharpen up with a colored pencil in a bit. Well, not tonight, but there we go. See, I'm just softening these. Now, this is not ideal. If you're trying to do something where you're getting this really like almost a glow from everything, you're not going to want to use your opaque colors on top of your translucent colors. It would actually be better for you to have just do it in black and white first and then glaze the color on top. That will give you better, like more depth in the work than what I'm doing right now, going back and forth. And then these edges, I've got fuzziness that I'm just going to use the colored pencil to fix. Clarence said, what brand of flow improver do you use? This one it says Vallejo. I've got a link to it in the video description, or at least I should. Let me know if it's not there and I'll add it later. But it's all the supplies that I'm using tonight are linked below in the video description. Okay. So again, coming through here, just a little bit. And the closer you get, the finer that detail, the sharper the detail is going to be. And right now, I'm just tinting color so I can be back a little ways. If I need something to be like super detailed, I'm going to put that airbrush so it's right next to it. And you're going to control with the trigger here. When you push down versus pull back will control how much paint versus how much air is coming through. The farther back, the further down you push, the more air, the more paint. So you can also control that little thing I showed you at the beginning of the video. You can change your PSI. So I can turn this up to where I've just got air blasting through. That I don't need on a number 2 needle. That's too much. The number 2 needle I'm using for fine detail, so I want my PSI to be pretty low. If you're getting splattering and spitting, you may have a problem where your needle is getting clogged. And so I'm going to take that cap off. Ugh. Seriously, if the people who made this airbrush are watching, this thing right here is like priceless. Magnet, on and off. How? It's I take it on and off so often, not having to screw it on and off like my old one. So nice. Okay. So anyway, this little tip will sometimes you'll get a little dry tip. And what I do, I just take my fingernail and gently scrape it off. Number 2 needle. So when I say gently, I mean like over the top, gently. Be freaking careful with that needle. First time out, I bent it just because, and it was a minor, but I mean, it's so delicate. The number 3 is not as easy for me to bend. Normally, if I bend a number 3 needle, it's because I dropped the airbrush and it landed on it. If you are worried about that, just keep this little cap on. But for me, I usually like the needle exposed, and it's easier for me to clean the dry brush off, or the dry tip off. So, let's see. Nick said, do I mix colors? If so, how? Yes. What I do when I mix colors, so let's say I want to mix an orange. I'm going to put yellow in first. I'm going to put more yellow than red, put my 1 or 2 drops of the red, and then I can take one of these little sticks. These are actually for nails, but you can take a little stick and just stir it in there, or a paintbrush, just stir it in there. Some people will cover the tip. Well, you would have had to have left this on, otherwise that won't work. But you can cover this and then let air come through, and that'll reverse. It blows the air back through the cup and it'll mix it that way. I don't like to do that, kind of makes a mess, but it is a method that some artists will use. I just stir it through that, let the air flow through, and it'll kind of mix on its own. But like I said, I'm using such a small amount. Now, when I was working on the roses, I was mixing so many colors because I wanted them to be like like more orangey pink, and then I needed a cool pink, and I'm mixing from the same, like I had one pink, and I'm mixing cool and warm from that, and I was doing it so much. I got so sick of it, I went and spent like $200 on paint that night from Dick. I think I got most of them from Dick Blick's, some from Jerry's, but I went crazy buying a ton of Golden's airbrush paints. And just for transparency, Golden's did provide me with like 10 of my colors of paint to test, and I love them, and I went and bought a ton more. So most of them I bought myself, but just to be honest, they did give me some of my high flow to test. All of the Holbein I bought myself, and those, like I said, they're really good. The reason that I've been leaning more towards my Goldens paint, well, one, I just like the company, but two, this bottle for the Holbein, I tend to make a bigger mess with this. I really like the cap that the Goldens is. As far as the performance of the paint, I'm more likely to clog an airbrush with Goldens, but now that I've been using the flow improver, I'm not clogged anything. I'm not even, like, that's not even a factor anymore. The end result, you can't tell where I used one versus the other. They look the same otherwise. What PMS am I using for the finer details? Like off, like it doesn't even register on the thing. It's like all the way down. It's super, super low. Like I can't see what the number would be. It's below 10, I can tell you that. It's really low. What kind of compressor do I use? Again, all the supplies I'm using are in the video description. Now I'm using the Grex air compressor. Before I used Storm Force, but my Storm Force is put away. I think I'm gonna let my husband use it on his models because he's not touching my new baby. This is the Grex one that I'm using. Okay, so again, toning down some of these. This is giving me, and I'll have to glaze color over this. Like right now, this is a little too muddy, a little too like foggy looking, but this gives me a nice. Now, if you want super sharp lines, one of the things that you'll want to pick up, especially while you're learning, now, like airbrush artists who are I'm knocking stuff over, who are masters at what they're doing, they, super, super practiced. Let me grab one of these. Don't really need these too much. But what I can do, let's say I need a straight line here. Let's straighten this out. Let me flip this over. If I can grab it wrong here. Oh my gosh, can't pick it up. There we go. I can use one of these. Now this is slightly curved, but I mean, I can pick where I want and go up against it. And now I've got this super crisp line. So you can use these tools, and I have a flippin' ton of these things. I've got some I linked below to Amazon with this one, and then I've got this in a couple of different sizes. This one is, what is it? Freehand Airbrush Template by Art Tool. I've got a bunch from, there's a website called, I'm kicking things, Airsick, AIRSICK, I have the sticker on my thing, Airsick Stencils. No, yes, airsickstencils.com. I love their stencils. That's where I got my whole airbrush set, my flame set, where you've got all of these different sizes, and you can control your harsh edges. Now, if you want a harsh edge, you're going to keep it. Let's see if one of these matches. Yeah, actually, that kind of matches that edge. So let's say I want a harsh edge just along there. Just a little bit, and it gives me this sharp edge. If I want a soft edge, I'm going to raise it out here a little bit, and I don't know if you can see on the video, but it's not quite touching the paper, and if I airbrush along this gives me this really soft look over here. So harsh edge, just push it up against the paper it's touching. So you can still use a stencil and get softer by holding it apart a little bit, but these little tools, you can also make your own. You can get a piece of paper, or, I mean, little plastic things, page protectors, I don't know, office supplies, get creative, and cut it in shapes that you want and use that. You can use tape. You can use all kinds of things to get very, very sharp edges. Now you have to be careful because, like in this case, to get the way I've got the cutout with where I kept things white, I used Frisket, what's it called? Well, Frisket, a low tack Frisket, because the higher tack Frisket ripped my paper pretty bad. Good thing I wasn't planning on selling this, or I knew this was practice, so it didn't really matter. But you can use that, and it gives you a harsh edge. But the thing is, see how harsh this edge is? It looks weird. It doesn't have a natural look, and I'm going to have to use, my colored pencils are probably how I'm going to fix that. I need to soften that down. It's too harsh in some areas, and then too soft in other areas, because I made a mess. But there's just so many of these fun little tools you can use to control things, and especially when you're getting used to all of, controlling these. So again, we'll come back to this. Now this, I'm starting to get dry tip because I didn't paint for too long there. I'm just going to clean that tip off. There we go. So I'm going to let that one set. I'm actually going to come back and work on this one. Now this one I need to darken up quite a bit. I'm going to mix, let me see, move my image so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to mix some sepia with a little bit of black. Now I've got to be careful because the black wants to take over everything. Actually, I'll use raw umber. Raw umber will work because it's handy. And everyone freaks out about color. What color did you use for this? What color did you use for that? I was going to use one, grab this one first. I'm like, that'll work. It's not, don't worry so much about your color. And especially in something like this, I can glaze over the, well, I say glaze, but I'm going to airbrush over, which would be a glaze, to tint color. I'm just worrying about my values at this point. Make sure your darks are dark enough, your light's light enough. So I'm just going to put a couple drops in there. Well, 3, 4, because I actually have a lot of light gray. I don't know if this color's going to come out right. I may end up having to clean this first. The black that I'm using, this one's actually Holbein. I don't know why I don't have any black of the Goldens. See, I always make a mess with this. I don't like the bottles of these. And then I can use my little stick, stir that up. And that is definitely going to be too dark. Whatever, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, Nick, the compressor is not very loud. I mean, I'll paint late at night. The only thing that worries me with the compressor, my studio is above the people below me, their master bedroom. And it's quieter than a hairdryer, so that doesn't worry me, but it vibrates. And so I don't know if it sounds weird on the floor. No one's living below me right now. So I'm actually thinking about going and talking to the people who run the office and have them let me in the empty unit below me so I'll have my husband run it to see if you can hear it at night. So I know not to use it at night because I don't want to be that neighbor. Okay, hold on. This is too light. What I'm doing is running this right now. I'm letting this run through until the black comes through. Come on. Where is the black? I know you're in there. Actually, I'm using enough of this. I'm starting to smell this. And that's another thing. If you can smell it, I know I'm breathing this in. We'll use the little pot right now. Is that coming out? I expected that black to take over. I'm hesitant to put more. There we go. That'll work. I'm hesitant to put too much more black because it'll go super dark super fast. Okay, let's tighten this guy back up. And now airbrushing, once you get used to it, it's actually very fast. What I'm doing, because like I said, I'm not used to, I have the most practice doing the cool out of focus backgrounds. I don't try to do detail normally, so I'm really out of practice. And it's one of those things, it doesn't matter how much I know mentally, like I understand the concepts. I know how to do this. I'm out of practice. It's like playing an instrument. I can know my scales. I can know everything, but I haven't played in a while. My fingers are not going to do what I want them to do. So it definitely takes some practice. Okay. And it's, God, the amount of time it saves. I love doing this, the backgrounds like this for colored pencil, because you save so much time. Like, it's insane how much time is saved by, with the airbrush for something out of focus. I mean, it can have an out of focus background done in, it depends on what I'm doing, how elaborate I want to go, but it can be 10 minutes to half an hour versus that same amount of time would have taken me, 5 hours to days in colored pencil to do by itself. So it is such a time saver, and I just love how it looks. And you've got to get used to, too, the speed that you're moving the airbrush. You move too slow, you get a little shake. Move too fast, it starts to skip. Like, you're going to get in the hang of how fast to move it, how close, how much PSI. Everything is kind of connected, and the only way you're going to learn that is to mess with it and to make ugly things. Like, that's this one. This is the first time in forever I've tried doing any sort of detail with an airbrush. I don't care if it comes out good. I'm practicing. I'm playing with it. So, don't put too much pressure on yourself with that. Beth says, same situation here. A doormat, kids, foam floor, tile, or piece of carpet should take care of it. Yeah, and you want to be careful, though, depending on what you put underneath the compressor, because the tile maybe, it heats up. It does get very hot, and so you wouldn't want to put it on something that's like going to, overheat it. You want nice airflow around it. Is very, very important. It's on carpet, so it should be pretty toned down, but I definitely want to find out. I think I'm being paranoid in that it's not making as much noise as I think it is for them, but I just want to make sure, because I don't want my neighbors to hate me and retaliate with loud music or something. I hate listening to people's music. I love music. I just don't want to listen to somebody else's. So these bottles, these do not have to be exact where I put the lines. I'm just kind of going for close. And one of the things you want to watch too with your airbrush, this, you're not just spraying wildly everywhere. I'm pushing the nozzle down, I pull back to get air. When I finish that brush stroke, I push forward, let up. And it's a movement that you're going to get the hang of, but it's push down, pull back, push forward, let up. Don't push down, pull back, let go. You end up, well, you'll get it splatters, it clogs things, you end up having like extra paint flow through. So just be careful with that. Tea, I need tea. Okay. Let's see. We've got the gray here. I think I want to apply more gray colors. And that's like, you can mix all of the colors you need, but man, is it easier. Oh, that's a metal pole that goes there. Oh, that's why I have a line drawn out. As I was painting last night, I'm like, I don't know why there's a line there. The stem's over here. I don't know what. Genius. Pay attention to your reference photo. I'll have to paint that back in. I wasn't done with that section with the little metal guys anyway. Now, one of the things that's really fun, you can, when you're learning to airbrush, you can sit there, you know, the first thing most people do, like write their name, get the hang of kind of writing and moving things that way. But what I like to do, pick something like this, see the repetitiveness of these bars? These are the only ones I spent much time on. These I just loosely layered in. But that sort of thing helps you to gain control. Pick a project. I find it to be more fun to pick a project to try, even if it comes out terrible, doesn't matter. I have more fun doing that than sitting there like trying to just make lines, just practicing straight lines. Now, practicing straight lines is good. Maybe do that at first, but I quickly jump into, I'm just going to try a project. This is more fun to me. This is more fun for me to learn in any medium. You'll notice whenever I'm trying something new, I jump into a project pretty soon. But the thing is, you have to like not be hard on yourself or care too much if it comes out perfect. That can take away the fun of it when you're learning something. Okay, I've got a shadow that's going to go here. So I've got a harsh line. Let me see if I've got a curve that'll help me with this. And if you get a lot of these templates, I don't just have one. I have a ton of these little stencils in different shapes because I can almost always find something that'll work for what I need. Let's see, where's that curve? I want this to be a sharper line right about there. And then I'm going to do the opposite. Well, I'll use a different curve, but I've got to get a shadow right underneath that. I don't need that just yet. 1 second, text. Okay. My husband is telling me about comic books he's bidding on. Well, that's scary. He's shopping. Okay, I've got to sharpen up a lot of lines in here when I come back through with the black, but I don't. What I try to do too is normally, like if I paint, I'll just rinse the brush and change colors really quick if I'm working on one little area, but it's kind of a pain, as you saw, to change colors constantly. So I kind of work, I'm like, okay, I'm going to use, where else can I put this color while I've got it out? A little bit of a dry tip there. We'll pull that out. I should have put more lube, or not lube, flow improver. That'll help it not to get the dry tip as much too. But the dry tip, it's not that it's so much clogged, it's just that paint starts dry on the tip of the needle. But remember, if you're using that number 2, I mean, even with a number 3, you've got to be careful. Trust me, it is frustrating, like you wouldn't believe, when you spend $40 on a needle, and because it's not like, I don't know if you can just get the needle with this. I'm gonna have to look into it. All I found were the needle kit, at least on Amazon, and because you're getting the nozzle, the needle, it's the whole thing so it's 40 for the number 2. The number 2 is the most expensive. You do not want to be out $40 because you were careless and bent that tip. And if you bend the tip, what happens is either it'll make it so the paint doesn't really come out, or it comes out and curves. So you're like trying to go straight, but the paint's shooting out to the side. So it really matters. Okay. And like I said, I know a lot of you are talking about you're interested in airbrushing now and you haven't. Just be careful because, or not be careful, just keep in mind, even my brain shut off there for a second and went into the wrong direction, but even if you have no experience, you can still make really cool backgrounds right out of the gate. So I think that's one of the coolest things about this medium is for those out of focus backgrounds, which is the main thing I use it for, easiest thing in the world to do with these. So it makes it less scary. Like right now, the amount of control that you've got to use, let's see, I've got a line that goes through here. That actually is going to have to be really dark. The amount of control is much more when you're doing the smaller stuff. But if you want those fuzzy backgrounds, those are so easy to do. Now, Grex makes another airbrush where it's like a gun where the trigger is down here. It's more comfortable, I guess, if you're working like a lot, like painting big areas and a lot of stuff. But for fine detail and stuff, you're definitely going to feel like you have more control with a normal trigger like this one. And then remember, this one came with, or the cover on this has the thing that goes on there. This actually makes it harder for me to control. It's way easier with a little needle. And if my hand, and I have arthritis and I'm still okay with this, but when I haven't airbrushed in a while, my hand will start cramping and getting sore. It's kind of like playing an instrument where like violin, I'm out of practice on that too. Haven't played in a while. When I pick that up, my hand is going to be sore for the first week that I'm playing. And then once you build up muscles again and get used to holding it, because this is not a natural position for your hand to be in, it will get easier. Let's see. Lila wants to know how I deal with my fibro. I control it with diet. I want to say diet and exercise. Exercise. I control it with diet. I eat a very, very low carb diet and I avoid sugar or anything artificial, including artificial sweeteners. Well, any sweeteners really I can't do. Yeah, that's it. Carbs are one of the biggest things for me that I'll do it. Carbs and unnatural things. But yeah, diet makes a huge difference. I think I'm good. I'm actually going to run through this, clean this out. And so what I'm going to do, like I talked about earlier, I'm going to spray my spray bottle and let the paint run out into my water well. There's not much in there. How would I get a chrome color? A chrome color you get depending on what is reflecting on the chrome. That's the trick to anything metallic or chrome like that. It's the colors that are reflecting on it. This is just grays and silvers and whites, but it's going to look flat unless you have it reflecting what's in the room. So what's in the room determines what color. So again, going to use that. I'm going to run, actually, let's let this come through a little faster. I'm going to run that through. But yeah, anytime you're doing anything metallic, it's not, unless you want it to look flat, it's not going to look good. It's not going to look like chrome. It's not going to look shiny unless you get all of those reflective colors. I'm going to run. Actually, I don't even know why I just put airbrush cleaner through this. I don't need to because I'm going to black. Black will take over this, but whatever. I already put it in. I'll run it through. Just keep that in mind, though, anytime anything that's metallic or shiny. Like right now, this metal isn't super shiny. Like it's got highlights, but I'm keeping mostly black and white on there. I'm not pulling out like colors from the surroundings because it's not reflective. But if I wanted it to be shiny, that's going to have to pick up the pinks from the roses. It'll pick up everything around it. Okay, so now if you can, I don't know if you can really see, in here, it's still dirty in there, and this is where it starts to dry. I can wipe it out with a Q-tip, but for the most part, that's going to get cleaned when I soak it, because it's like really starting to dry. Some of it's coming out. When I soak it overnight in the cup, the other cup with the solution, you can see some of that is coming out. That'll get nice and clean. But you want to be in the habit of keeping things clean. Like my last airbrush, one of the mistakes that I would make too is I would clean this good, but I never really cleaned the cup good. I would leave, there's always dried paint in there. That flakes off and clogs the airbrush. What do you think? Like, I don't even know what I was thinking. I know that, and I still wasn't cleaning it. Soak everything every single time when you're done painting. Okay. So now I'm going to go ahead and be brave and put the black, which is going to be dark, but I have a few things where I need to add the black. So again, I'm going to put a drop or two of my flow improver. This is like seriously, starting to use this stuff made such a difference. Like the amount of clogs I have, that and cleaning the airbrush. Those are the two things you need to do not to have clogs. And the paint that you're using matters. I mean, like I said, the Claritex is meant for a number 5 needle. It's going to clog at number 2 and a number 3 airbrush. Oh, itchy nose. Where did my lot go? I know it's sitting right in front of me. Oh, more text. Hold on. Let me make sure it's not an emergency. Yep, still has been texting me about comic books. Again, make sure you mix up your paints. So, put a couple drops. Yeah, I got 3 of the black. I'm actually going to run a little bit of brown in it too, just to not be straight. Oh, that's not what I want. There we go. I'm going to put burnt sienna in there, so it's not as dark. It's still going to be pretty dark. And so what I do usually, if I'm too lazy to mix it with a stick, I just kind of shake the airbrush a little. Be careful though, because if you're putting a lot of paint, like I used to put tons of paint in my airbrush. Now it's like way inside, so I'm not really splattering. But if you put a ton in there and you try to mix it like this, you know, do the little shake to mix it up, it will splatter everywhere. There is the cap for this, but it's just not practical for me to be putting on and taking off constantly, and I'm using such a small amount it doesn't matter. Let's say I'm painting a big airbrush, a big mural, and I'm using like a big cup and I've got it filled up all the way. I'm putting the cap on that. That will get spilled everywhere as you're moving the airbrush. Like it'll. That's how I end up wearing most of my paint when I have in the past. So let's run this through. Okay, it's a nice dark color. I'm adjusting the back end on this. And this is where I'm using that paper towel to test how wide or thick or thin my lines are versus finding out here, whoa, that got too wide. You know, I didn't have this as tight as I would like it to be. So, and just because before I forget, make sure, if you guys, I can't talk to, I skipped my nap today and I'm feeling it. Make sure to check out our moderators channels. We've got Valerie, Joseph Fincham, Nick Edgar. I've got links to their channels in the video description. They've all got art channels. Definitely check them out. Say thank you to them for helping me because they are a huge help. Okay, so back to work. So where's this line? I think this one comes about here. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to be lazy. I'm going to use a template. Now, this doesn't need to be perfectly straight. It's kind of an old bent thing. So I don't need the line to be perfectly straight. But, yeah, that's too bent. I'll use a postcard. I always save my extra postcards. Also, if you were a patron pledging $9 or more a month in, when was this for? August? You guys will, that postcard is coming. I'm using an extra one as a straight line. So let's just go here, set that up where I want it. Like I said, it doesn't have to be straight. If I needed like perfectly straight, perfectly parallel to the edge of the canvas, everything's perfect, then I'm going to measure and make sure everything's really straight, but this does not need that. This does apparently need more black paint though. That is not as dark as I was Come on. Nope, you are still way lighter than I thought. Okay, more black, hold on. We'll put 3 more drops of black and see if that gives me... There we go. Okay. So back to this. And see how I'm holding it? I'm mostly spraying the card, but see, I've got this nice straight line now. I'm not spraying over here. I'm spraying the card and letting the overspray go onto this side. So I'm going to do the same on the other. Yeah, Nick, you were actually supposed to fancy up. I thought that was what you said you'd do if I linked you. You would be fancying up your channel. So, you know, I get to work on that. Let's see, go on the opposite. This side will end up with a highlight, but I'm just going to block it in solid now. God, I love this number 2 needle. I never worked with one until I got this one. I love the number 2. You can get so much finer detail. It's so nice. And the number 3 will give you really nice detail too. And the kit that I linked in the video description, that one comes with, I believe it's a number 3. I actually couldn't find where it said. It should be a 3. That's kind of the average normal. I bought a number 5 that I probably didn't need because I don't know when I would ever use it. But yeah, the 2 and the 3, those are the 2 that I'm really, the 2 right now is my, like my best friend. Okay, now see right now, see how this is very flat. I don't want to leave it that way. I'm going to come back through and add a highlight along the side, but I'm not going to bother with it now until I get that color back out. Rachel said, I didn't get a chance to say it last week, but your newly organized studio looks awesome. Thank you. I am loving it. I need to make a video for that soon. I have all the footage, but I need to put it all together now. Yeah, I love being in here. I love the backdrop. You can't, well, you can kind of see the lights, but it's so neat with the lights that I hung and the garland, and it just feels nice in here. I mean, I liked how it felt before, but it really feels nice now. Okay, there's a line that needs to go down here. Am I missing any more of those guys? I was missing a bunch of them. Okay, now I can use the same one. Now I can do the same thing. Let's say I want a kind of straight line. I'm not going to push this all the way against the board. I'm going to pull it up just a bit. And now while I have a straight line, it's a little bit fuzzy. Thanks, Valencia. Leela said, where did you learn about airbrushing? Did you learn it in California? I mostly taught myself. I mean, I pretty much taught myself what I needed. And then one of my students, where I was teaching, she wanted her daughter, the mom wanted her daughter was 16 at the time, 15, 14, I don't know, 13? I don't remember now. It's super weird to me because she's married now. And I'm like, I knew her when she was like 11. I worked with her for a long time. But anyway, she wanted her daughter to take this class at Coast Airbrush. And I was definitely still doing the starving artist thing at the time. And she said she would pay for me to take the class if I took her daughter down there. And, you know, we went to lunch and everything. I took basically just babysat. But she paid for my course, and it was several $100s, and that was, you know, a long time ago. That was a lot of money, but it was an 8-hour course that I took at Coast Airbrush, so that helped. That, I'm not sure how much I learned. I got good tips on just general care of the airbrush that I wasn't previously doing, and stuff like that. Let's see. Let's go this way. I want a harsh line there. Ooh, too harsh. I had that too close. Oh, I've got to go on top of it with a white anyway, so that'll soften it. Doesn't matter. Fabs and Draw says, I love whales. Any chance you will do another whale painting? Definitely. That's one of my favorite. Whales and dolphins are one of my favorite things to paint. Like, for years, that's what I specialized in. I only painted whales and dolphins. So some of this is really harsh, but I can come back through and tone a lot of this down. You just have to be careful where you want to use a harsh edge. Because like right now, that line, way too harsh. Way too harsh. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to go on top. It's got white highlights over it, so it's not really going to matter. If you are a member on Patreon, I think this was one of our reference photos from 2 or 3 months ago. So you have this, and then I'll once this video goes live for patrons, I'll provide the photo for you again. One of the things that I'm loving is that I don't have to use a pedal anymore. My last air compressor, there was a pedal that and it always slid under my easel, so I'm always trying to dig it back out. But I had to use this little pedal thing to control how much air was going, like turning the compressor on and off. This one, it's all automatic. Oh, is it nice? So nice. In this stage, everything's pretty fuzzy. It's kind of messy. And again, the farther back the airbrush is, the more fuzzy what you're doing is going to look like. So you move closer, usually turn down the PSI, less air coming through, less paint going through, and that's going to get you finer detail the closer to that canvas that you are, or in this case, the paper. Now, you can airbrush on canvas. I actually prefer paper. Like if I'm going to do this much airbrushing, I definitely prefer the board like this. And you can, when you're practicing, you should use cardboard to practice on. You don't have to or poster board, just something cheap. Don't go spend a ton of money. You can, this isn't like with painting, if you're not using a good canvas, it's hard to learn to paint because it doesn't blend right. It doesn't do certain things. With the airbrush, I find most papers, they're fine. I mean, as long as it's smooth. You don't want something super bumpy like a rough watercolor paper, but because it catches weird on the tooth there. But I really do like painting on this sort of a board more than a canvas. If I'm going to do a canvas, then I'm going to do that when I'm going to do hand brush work for fine detail. But if I'm going to use colored pencil, boards like this, and this board, this Canson Mi-teintes one's really nice. And it's thick, like it's like a mounted type, like a thick, nice board. Is the compressor connected to an electrical outlet? I am thinking of so many smart comments right now, and I'm trying to refrain because I'm not as, no one else thinks I'm as funny as I think I am. The short version of that is, how else would it turn on? I don't know. Oh, I guess you could, it might be battery operated. These need enough power that battery operated wouldn't happen. So yes, okay, never mind. I'm being the silly one here. Yes, it is plugged into an electrical outlet. So see, I'm trying to tone down those edges that are just so harsh. So I'm going a little darker, and then I'll come back through. I've got to put white highlights, but I really want to darken some of that. Like this edge, this is a hot mess right there. This is the downside of using Frisket versus just painting straight. Like, you have to really watch cleaning that up. And luckily for me, because I'll be using the, and I'm putting this on the background and the subject just to kind of blend that in, I will be able to fix all of this with the colored pencils later. You know, when you want straight lines, I find it to be much easier. Move a little bit faster. If you try to get a straight line with that airbrush and you're going really slow, at least for me, I am guaranteed to have a shaky, like, horrible mess. Eric draws, no, sorry, Ursies. God, I can't, I'm tired. I really should have taken that nap. Says, have you ever considered painting a beluga whale in a painting or drawings? I've considered it. I just don't have any good reference photos yet. I need to get some, because those guys are flipping adorable. Like, so cute. I still need to paint the manatee. Valerie inspired me to paint one of those with one of her paintings. It's over on her channel if you want to check that out. It's amazing looking, and now I want to paint one. I just haven't gotten that far. I think this one's actually higher. That one's lower. Okay. You guys are having trouble with YouTube tonight? What's it doing? I know yesterday at, like, was it 6 p.m. or something like that? Or no, 8 p.m. I think it would have been 8 p.m. or I don't know. I guess YouTube just went down altogether yesterday. People were freaking out. I didn't realize it. I'm glad I didn't. I probably would have freaked out too. Okay, so this whole area actually needs to be way darker. That was one of the... And see how when I spray that, when I want that straight line, I'm spraying the card, not straight. The paint is not going straight on there. I'm going to straighten up this line too. Or just sharpen it up, I should say, not straighten it out. My stomach is growling. And now I'm starting to get clean up things. But using tools, your stencils, and all the anything shaped weird, like my whole flame set from that was, what did I say it was? airsickstencils.com, that website. All of these little things are just so helpful when you need a specific curve. Like this one actually doesn't fit for a lot of that, but I have other ones that would. There's a stack of them I keep in a folder. There's so many. I need a better way to organize that. Pepsin Draw says, how to use the artist Frisket thing. So Frisket comes in a few different ways. One is like a roll. One is it's basically a big piece of clear tape. And what I do when I'm working on something like this, I draw out my subject. I put the tape on it, and I'll show you this in the full review when that goes up. Probably a few weeks away. But you put the tape over it, and then I take a really sharp razor blade and just very lightly go through and score everything, and then I can peel off the parts that I don't want. You just have to be careful, because it is easy to cut through and hit your paper. I do the same thing when I'm doing it on canvas. See, just really close there. And you've got to be careful though, because if you get too close and your PSI isn't right, you'll start to get this stuttery spray going on. You've got to have everything balanced out. I don't know what was going on in that corner. And I'll have to take white to soften that out later. Ursies said, can you do a pan pastel of a beluga whale in an upcoming live stream on YouTube? Maybe. It's a possibility. It always comes down to, like, if I find the right reference photo for what I want to do. I need to soften that out. I don't like this line. So it's super dark now, and then I'll put light on top of it. It just wasn't working for me. I am so glad I ended up going back and buying this little covery thing. I really should have just bought it. I would have saved money if I would have bought the airbrush that came with it. But it is so, like, this is one thing that hasn't gotten sore. The way my finger is right up against it. It's kind of like those pencils where you taught kids how to hold a pencil right. And you put that grip on it and it put their fingers in the right place. This is so comfortable to hold. The only thing that cramps for me is just pushing down the trigger and pulling back, because it's a motion that your muscles have to get used to. Let's see, start darkening down here. This whole area down here has to get a lot darker as it moves through right about here. Pretty dark through this area. What is the basic PSI for background airbrushing from Salute? It's going to partially depend on the gun you're using, which needle you're using, how much control do you need? I mean, I honestly, I don't know what I typically use, because my old airbrush, the area where you could see the PSI had so much paint on it from over the years. I have no idea what it ever was. I just went by the sound and the pressure. You just kind of can feel that if it's blowing out too hard, turn it down. I have no idea what it was at any time for years, and I haven't done much with the background on this, and I wasn't paying attention. It's on the floor, so I can't even see what it's at, so I'm not sure what I normally have it at. I know a lot higher than this. Pepsin said, is there a story behind your unique hairstyle and hair color choices? Well, my style is probably pretty average. It's just layered. I mean, that's kind of boring. But the color, I just get bored. It was black for a long time, and then I remove the color, and you get this kind of coppery color when you remove it. So that's why the ends of it are, well, mostly it's back to my natural color now. But this is all back here. That's all my natural color. I've been growing that back out. And the front is bleached just for highlights. It's actually more. I think I want to tone that down. It's a little bit too much highlights lately. So not much story there other than I get bored and I color my hair. That's normal, right? And the unfortunate side of that story is I don't always think it through very well. Like, hey, I'm going to make my hair black and be stuck with it for years because I can't freaking get the black out. Black paint does not like to come out of your hair. Or black paint, black hair dye. So I was hesitant to do it or to remove it for years because I knew it was going to damage it. And I did. When I did the remover, I fried my hair so bad. But most of the fried parts grown out. It's pretty close to all being my natural hair now. At least in the back. Obviously not the bleach up front. That was the most boring story I've ever told, ever. No, I'm pretty sure I've told more boring stories than that. That one that was pretty close, though. Let's see. Courtney said, I have the Neo Iwata brush that takes the 3.5 millimeter needles. Do you think it would take the 2? No. That's the thing. This is what's so cool about this airbrush is that it's interchangeable. You can change out parts to have one of, gosh, you've got the 2, the 3, the 5, the 7, and then the fan. So, I mean, that's a lot of that you can do with one. But normally, changing out a needle is not something that most airbrushes are meant to do. You would need a gun that could handle that size needle. So, no, the Iwata needle definitely would not. Chelsea said, yeah, YouTube has been acting weird recently. My subscription tabs normally show a red dot saying you posted a new video, and then I'm disappointed because there's no video, and it lied to me. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I've heard some weird things about what it's been doing. Well, one of the more common is just not telling people when there's any video, or people will go to the video and it says that the video was private and it wasn't private. So I don't even know what YouTube is doing right now. They've updated a lot of stuff on the back end, like with the YouTube Creator Studio, which is amazing. It actually is really nice now that I'm getting used to it. But yeah, it's kind of weird. See how I'm pulling the airbrush back? I'm holding it at a distance where I want a really soft transition. Where I want a heavier line, I'm pushing that same airbrush closer. And the same number 2, I can do pretty much all of this with it. I don't have to, like, I'm not constantly changing out my needle. And if you're like, I don't have a number 2, I only have, like Courtney, you have the 3.5. That's all I used for years. This can get finer detail. So, I mean, it is easier with a finer detail one. But the 3, I mean, really, that Iwata Neo, that was the airbrush I used forever. So the 3, the bigger needles, you can do. Especially if you're using things like this to get a fine edge, or you're using a lot of the templates, it makes it easier to get the, like, nice crisp line. So don't feel like you can't do something with just that. You absolutely can. I mean, gosh, I remember back when I first started airbrushing, when I told Coast Airbrush, when I went in there, they asked what I was going to do, and I told them what I wanted it for like painting and fine detail, you know, mostly for special effects, but I wanted it for airbrushing shadows, for doing all that sort of thing. They sold me a number 5 or it was my Tamiya that it has a number 5 needle. They said that the parts were cheaper. That's why they encouraged that one. It was easy to get parts for it, and it was a lot cheaper to get replacement parts. And at the time, I needed to, like, saving every penny really, really mattered. So I went with that one, but that was a number 5, and I still to this day, I'm like, really, a number 5 though? For what I told them I wanted, knowing what I know now, they really should have suggested a 3 or 3.5, something along those lines. The 5 was way too big, and it wasn't possible. Too much air, too much everything was always blowing out, no matter what PSI I set it to, because that needle was just not right for what I was trying to do. Or, it wouldn't have done what I'm doing now, or it wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have had enough control to make it do that anyway, I should say. So, but a 3, or 3.5, whatever yours is fine. Is it a 3.5? I always thought it was a 3. I think you're right. It's a 3.5 on the Neo, huh? Fabs Draw says, do you ever have Liquitex Basic tube paint not coming out of the tube? I have problems with paint color coming out of mine. I've only had it happen a couple of times on really old paint, but not normally. If it's a new tube, return it, take it back and have them exchange it, because that shouldn't happen. It'd have to be old and dry for that to happen. Sarah McSart said, I didn't even get a notification for this live stream. I almost missed it. Oh no, you're always here, Sarah. Valerie said, I wish we would have talked about the Aztec airbrush when we talked. Did you like it or dislike it? Right now, I'm like super sold on this one. I am in love with this airbrush right now. Plus green. Sorry, Aztec isn't going to top that. let's see. Gail said, I dyed my red hair black because of depression when my hubby was deployed for a year in 2002, post 9/11. He's retired, and my hair is red again. I would take black is hard to get out, huh? It really, like, that's like, and before I did black, I had dyed my hair a few years before that. It had been bright, like stop sign red. I dyed it that color. That wasn't easy to get rid of either. The black was way harder, though. Yeah, my plan now is once all of the damage is grown out, I'd like to dye the tip, just the ends, like just, you know, an inch at the bottom, some kind of a fun color. But, because I do have a lot of fun with hair dye, but I'm not going to, I don't want to have to worry about dyeing roots constantly. Oh, I must be getting a bit of dry. Oh, I didn't realize I had the cap on there. I think I'm getting a little bit of dry tip, or I'm out of paint. Yep, dry tip. Just scrape that off with my fingernails. But, oops. Dealing with roots, I do not, because of having blonde hair, my roots, the blonde roots with the black, and you would have dealt with that with the red roots, with the black hair, oh, it looked bad. It looked like I had a bald strip, so when it would grow, so I had to do my roots constantly, and I just didn't want to spend my time doing that. So if I dye my hair now, if I ever do anything, it'll only be the tips, because I never want to deal with roots like that again. So see how I'm holding the airbrush at a distance because I want this really soft. This is actually part of the background. I'm just darkening up what's there. And I've got to put highlights in all of these little bar guys. Fabs and Draw said, how many pets do I have? I have 3 hermit crabs. 2 are, one's a Caribbean, 2 are Ecuador, and I have a parrotlet, a cockatiel, so those are my chickens, my shoulder chickens. Well, the parrotlet's my husband's shoulder chicken, but anyway, and 2 dogs, my Italian greyhounds. The hermit crabs are basically kind of like having fish. Like, you don't really take them out and hold them. They don't like to be, like, they would not like that. But they're fish that don't require water or a leaky, you know, you don't have to deal with the fish tank leaking or water changes. It's just, they're super. It was kind of expensive to set up. I don't know that I would have gotten them if I realized. I didn't do my research first. It was an impulse buy, and I didn't realize, like, they need salt water, they need a big tank, they need all of this sand, they need all this stuff, and I didn't know that. So once I of course went shopping after that impulse buy and bought all the stuff they needed that night. But once they're set up, they're actually really easy to take care of. But it took a lot to get it, you know, get the tank the way that they need. Because they can live like 35, 40 years. They are not a, I didn't realize that when I bought them. Actually, I only bought one to start with because the guy that was selling them lied about the care needed. That kind of made me mad because it's all, you know. And I should have done my research. That was my own mistake there. I'm glad I have them now, but if I probably would not have gotten them if I would have realized how much it took to get them set up properly, or that they lived so long. Although, actually, I'm glad that they do because I love them. I think they're adorable, but I didn't know that going in. Again, all of this looks super flat now until I start putting highlights in. So like anything else with any medium, you're not just going to like, it has paint on it, so that part's done. Like, go back through, pay attention to your highlights, but get your contrast right. Where are your lights, where are your darks? The only thing I didn't like with the red hair is it bled onto everything. Like, seriously, every towel turned red. Like, it always would bleed. And because I had the bleach in the front would always turn pink every time I washed my hair. So for me, that was so much work to maintain and to not have on everything I owned. But I loved the red hair. I had purple for a while too, where it was like a purplish red or like a magenta. It was beautiful. I loved that color. But oh, that was another one. It was so hard to maintain. I think all of those hair colors too, it would have been easier if my hair wasn't blonde. Those roots, I had to do them every 2 weeks because the roots looked so bad growing out. Okay, where else do I need dark? You want to make sure that that airbrush is, oh, this is actually curving. That the airbrush is straight on. What happens if you start holding your airbrush at a slight angle, it's going to affect the type of spray you get. Now, there are times you want that look, but what happens if I hold this to the edge here and it sprays out, it's going to be super sharp here and fan out this way. That actually, I can show you. So I hold it here, like you've got your dot. I hold it to the side or to the edge. You get different, actually it's starting to spit. I need to get the edge off there. But you would get where the edges are, I'm not sure how well that's showing actually. This is not a good one to practice on. It's too slippery, but it kind of fans or spreads as it moves out. You don't get a super like controlled line, so be careful of that. That's why I like to keep it, you know, really straight on. And if the air compressor going on and off starts bugging you as you're working, headphones are a lifesaver. You don't have to listen to that the whole time, because it's not so noisy that you're really going to hear it much over headphones. Okay, let's see. Darken some of this up a little bit more around that edge. Gail said, henna from Light Mountain is great. I have no idea what you're talking about. That was probably from an earlier part of the conversation, and I do. Oh, for hair dye? I never tried that. That seemed, doesn't that not stay super strong long? Or like it isn't as permanent? So it ends up like my towels were always like red. It was a mess. I made a mess. Sorry, I do know what you're talking about now. Nick said, so does paint come out whenever you push the button? Because it looks so somewhat different on video. Is it a forward and back button? Or yeah, push down is going to control how much of the wow, my brain shut down. Air versus paint, pulling back is increasing the paint. Back increases the paint, down is the air. Although this one's a little bit different because, like, okay, my Iwata Neo, when I push the button down, I've got full, I don't know if you can see on this, like I can really control all these stages of how much air is coming out. Pull back is how much of your paint is coming out. If this one, it's like 1. it's just a click. It doesn't, I don't have the control of how much air. I'm controlling through the air compressor how much air is coming out, which I thought was going to be a huge problem for me, but now that I've been using it for a few days, it's not bothering me. But it was weird to get used to because I was so used to controlling the air, and this one it's just like on off. There's no definite like control as far as that area goes. But yeah, pulling back is going to let more paint out, and they kind of balance each other, how much air versus how much paint is coming. And again, you'll get more air. Turn the PSI up, and you can even force more through. Okay. So, let's see. I'm going to darken this whole, most of this is going to get darkened up. So see how I'm holding the airbrush back now? Because I just want this soft kind of tint of color. And then I'm going to come back through with white. This whole area needs to be a lot darker. Actually, I'm going to have to darken even more in here too. I need to soften that edge. That is too dark. Sometimes you can lift it a little with your finger. That was dry too, and it dries almost instantly. So sometimes if I splatter it a little, I can kind of dab it up with my finger, but it dries really fast. And the nice thing too, you do get, it doesn't take that long to really start getting the hang of using it. Like I said, it's very awkward. I remember the first time I tried an airbrush, I was working at a grocery store, and a guy who worked there knew I was an artist, and he's like, hey, you can come over and play with my airbrush. I'm like, all right, well, that sounds like a terrible pickup line. It wasn't like that at all. But I got to go over, and he had it set up in his garage. And so right off the bat, I'm like, I don't want to paint in a garage. That doesn't sound fun to me. Like, can I not paint inside? Because I think he had a big air compressor, like one from the hardware store that he was using. But he was like, try writing your name, and I'm doing all this, and it's like, it felt so awkward. I had always wanted one until I tried it at that moment. I'm like, this isn't for me. I can't do it. And then years go by, and I saved up and ended up getting the one to do like rays of light and stuff. I needed it for getting soft backgrounds for the underwater scenes that I was doing, mainly for that and rays of light are what I got it for, or initially. And it does not take that long to get the hang of. Like, it feels so awkward at first, but I mean, just a few days and I start to feel back to having more control again. Tamara said, this looks lovely. Thank you. I was sad I missed a lot of this one. Then again, I can't afford an airbrush setup. Started saving. Yeah, they're quite an investment. But if you get a good one, it's going to last you a really long time. I mean, my last one, that air compressor still works fine. I just made that line way too thick. I'm going to have to fix that. But my last one, I had it for almost 20 years. I've only replaced the hoses on it a couple of times. The hoses would kind of get worn out. And then these hoses too, like the one that I actually have attached to my airbrush. Look at me getting paint all over stuff. They really do last a very, very long time if you get a good one. So, it is worth saving for and getting something better than getting something cheap now. Actually, the student that her mom paid for me to take that Classic Coast airbrush, she did that. She got all excited. She won an airbrush, and she went and got something super cheap on eBay. Now, keep in mind, my original airbrush setup, now this includes paint and everything else and frisket and all that, but I ended up spending almost $500 on and I got a ton of paint. I got frisket. I got so much stuff that day. Every single thing I needed. she spent $50 on eBay, and she was all excited. She brings it in. Hers didn't even work. That was like not even the first time out. It was dual action, but not really. Like, I'm saying dual action with quotations because it didn't do what it should have done, and it was a waste. And that was $50 she could have put towards the better one, which they did. They ended up for Christmas getting her one like mine, and it's like you could have saved that money. Now, I'm not saying that it isn't possible to find. Maybe some of the cheap ones will work for you. I don't know. I mean, obviously, because they're all expensive. I'm not going to, even that, I'm not going to go out and test them all. But I would definitely talk to somebody at like Coast Airbrush, or they were always really good, or just somewhere, and ask them what they recommend. Let them know your budget. Tamara said I had a Pasha a long time ago, but I thought it was only, and that stopped. I don't know what the rest of that sentence was. There we go. Only for t-shirts, and it was in the 80s. Yeah, in the 80s. Oh my gosh, they airbrushed all the t-shirts. Like, here's a t-shirt of like a super like Napoleon Dynamite tiger, or what is it, Liger? What did he like? Haven't seen that movie in forever. But yeah, it was like super like kind of tacky stuff that it was. But now, I mean, the stuff that people do with the airbrush now is incredible. Like, it's just so impressive to see what some people are doing. This edge is just driving me crazy. I'm pretty sure I'm going to just fix it with a colored pencil, but see if I can tone it down and then go back over it with a highlight to fix. I'm just going to let it blend into the background a bit. See, this is the drawback of using Frisket and having that super harsh edge. You don't always want that. Oops, what am I thinking? That was the wrong side. This edge is all kinds of messed up. Yeah, I need colored pencils. Okay, I'm just going to go ahead and start with some of the darks over here. Try to get rid of that harsh edge. So again, holding it back further where I want that softer look, and then where I want the sharper edge. Whoops, a little too heavy there. Go a little bit closer. closer. I've got to put white over a lot of this for highlights. This is way too dark, but okay for now. Now, and you can get to, I mean, any point. I could just stop here and take over with colored pencil, or I could, you know, you can finish it with the airbrush. You can do so. You've got a lot of options with how far you want to go with which medium. It works really well as just mixed medium for a lot of different things. Like, you guys know I use it all the time with acrylics. Or you can do the underpainting with airbrush and then go on top of it with oil paints. That one works too. You just can't go back over it again with the airbrush. It's, you know, don't put the water base on top of the oil. Oh, this is a muddy mess over here. That is weird. I'll fix that with the highlights later too. This went a lot faster when it was, oh, why did my window go away? That was weird. This went a lot faster when I was working on the roses. These jars have so much, like, there's just so many layers of lights and darks, and they're definitely much more time consuming than the roses were. I was actually worried. I thought doing these little, the basket would be really hard. That part's really fun. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and switch colors right now. Let's do some highlights just because we're almost done for the night. Well, at least here. I'm going to keep painting later. Oops. Why does my chat keep going away? I guess YouTube is getting weird for me too. Chelsea said it's quiet. Yes, it is. It's weirdly quiet on this live stream, huh? What is my favorite movie? I don't know if I can tell you without being judged. I mean, okay, okay, Harry Potter. That I can easily say. There's something. Everyone's gonna hate me. There's something I can watch Twilight over and over and over again, and I know it's a horrible movie. I know it is some of the most atrocious acting. Dear God, could they not cast that movie better? But I don't know. There's something about that movie. The first two movies actually I really liked. I don't like the other ones that much. But yeah, Harry Potter definitely huge favorite for me, or all of them really. I mean, plus then you get to watch Edward die, so there's that too. Trying to think. I know I have other Little Mermaid. Oh, Lilo and Stitch. Yes, love Lilo and Stitch. And then I love all the comic movies. Like, I really like Venom. I don't know if it's a favorite, but it's up there. Doctor Strange. That was definitely a favorite. Loved that. Yeah. Whoops. Let's see. Nick said, I suppose experience is the answer, but how do you know where the paint is going to hit the paper? Yeah, experience. I mean, it should be right in front of you. If you're keeping at a 90-degree angle to that paper, it should always be in front of you. So, and yeah, you'll figure that out pretty quickly. That part's easy. Getting control of how to move it to create the shape you want takes a little bit more practice. But I mean, even like when I took that class at Coast Airbrush, the majority of the people there, because they provided you with the airbrush, they provided like everything. You just showed up, and everybody there finished a painting. We did a paintbrush. So we did like a wood grain on the end of the paintbrush and a water droplet. And it wasn't like the most amazing thing ever, but everyone's looked the same. Everyone was able to do it first time out. I was one of the few people who had experience airbrushing before. I mean, I'd been doing it for a while before we went, I took that student there. But I mean, everybody still looked about the same. It's not that hard to get the hang of. I think the big thing is understanding like that you can use these, you know, using a postcard to get a straight edge or using all of those little templates. That's going to help you a lot. And honestly, this would be so much easier. I would recommend if you're brand new, start with some black and white things and then glaze, you know, do it like a glaze with painting where you tint the color on top if you want color, but get the hang of it first with black and white and it will make your life so much easier than trying to mess with color, trying to figure out how to mix color. If you just do black and white, you can focus on nothing but controlling the paint where it goes. If you start mixing in color on top of that right away, you're trying to like, okay, well, how do I mix? I need this to be more yellow graining. You're trying to mix in here and you're mixing it. It's too many things all at once. I really do recommend start with black and white first. Although, I mean, the Coast Airbrush thing we did, it was black, white, and I think brown. So we used 3 colors to do. I think that's all we used. But we did 3 on that. So, you know, it kept it simple though. It wasn't like all crazy trying to mix things. Diane said, did the bottle first start out the way, did the first bottle start out that way as the last two? Yeah, the first one looked just like these did when I started. And the first bottle still has room to go. Like right now, everything's very soft, very out of focus. I'm going to have to sharpen everything up. But so these are just kind of your base layers. But yeah, they all were painted basically the exact same way. So these ones will end up, and these ones right now, it's actually kind of funny looking at the screen because the camera is coming at an angle. It looks like this one's super big and they get smaller. They don't. And this doesn't tilt down. These are actually all evenly spaced, but it's kind of a funny, yeah, it looks funny on the screen. Rick said, my 2 dachshunds are named Lilo and Stitch. That's awesome. Okay, since I'm switching to white, I'm going to, oops, almost try to use Flow Improver instead of my airbrush cleaner. See, that is one of the big reasons that I think I'm going to switch to Grex airbrush cleaner after this, because theirs is green in the bottle. Well, I like the bottle way better. I don't like these flip caps. But I keep almost grabbing the wrong one. I can't tell you, I mean, last night alone, not last night, the night before, how many times I almost tried to clean the airbrush out with, or no, I tried to use Flow Improver, I wanted Flow Improver, but I grabbed the airbrush cleaner like lots of times. So I just like the fact that they look a little different, makes it easier to separate. It's not that one, I mean, like I said, all the airbrush cleaners, I really don't see a big difference, at least in the ones I've tried. I've used Iwata, which is the one, I get it because it's cheaper to get the big thing of it. The Iwata I like when I soak everything at the end of the night. But I've used Iwata, I've used the Createx, and I've used the Grex. They really are very similar. I don't have any real complaints. It's just an issue of which bottle I like better, like the shape of the bottle. Joseph Fincham said, Lord of the Rings is a movie about walking. Even the trees walk in that movie, Randall. God, if that is so true. Okay, so that's nice and clean now. Gonna put a drop of Flow Improver. We'll wrap this up in just a minute. Actually, put 2 drops of Flow Improver. I'm just gonna use straight white, which is going to be too white. So what I'm gonna have to do, I'm shedding, is, I mean, this one it's too white too. I will end up toning this down by glazing a color over to tone it down. So I'm intentionally going to let this go a little, like the contrast is gonna be too high, and that's okay for this stage. Now, one of the reasons I don't like keeping the cap on, I will build paint up like crazy in that thing. And you'll see that now when I take a Q-tip. Oh my God, why is my hair everywhere? I'm seriously shedding. It was all built up on the inside of this. And it's one of the reasons I'll usually leave it off, because I'll start to build up and I've had it spit because I wasn't paying attention to that needed to be cleaned. Actually, this needs to be cleaned out a little bit too. Being super careful around that needle. Okay. So let's come through here and start putting some of the highlights. Oh, this is starting to spray. I'm going to pull this off, which is scary. but I need to pull a little bit more where that dry tip is getting in there. Careful putting that back on. Okay. Actually, I think my PSI is a little too high right now. See, this is like a cool white. It's not right for this. I'm going to tone this way down later. Actually, I want to make sure I don't spray this out like crazy. So let me grab my shield. A little bit more. Oh yeah, see, I spit there a little bit with that airbrush. Wait, is that old? I don't even know what that is. I'm not sure if I spit that or if that was already there. Yeah, I've got to actually, now that I'm putting the white in, I can see that I've got to go, like, this seemed like it was dark enough, but just figuring out contrast, now that I'm putting the white that needs to be there, I'm like, oh, that needs to actually be way darker in a lot of these. Now this is actually fun. This is mostly done with dots, the little highlights here. Where it's twisted, so just dotting some of that in there. A few little highlights. And this guy was one that definitely needed. And what I'm going to do is curve this postcard a little bit, just so that I can rest part of it, but it's not, this edge is not completely against it. I'll have to come back there, that's a little too much, but I'll need to do the shadow again. Okay, let's see. A little bit in here. I'm going to pull that up. Hard lagging. Well, we're pretty much done for the night, so I'm actually going to put the cap on this. There's nothing I can do about it being laggy, unfortunately. Let's see how bad it is. Oh yeah, that's... we're done anyway. Thank you guys for joining tonight. I'm really hungry, so that's my main reason I've got to stop. I have to go find something to eat. But thank you guys so much for joining. Again, check out the moderators' channels. They are the links are in the video description. And yeah, I think that's it for tonight. As usual, I have no idea what next week's live stream is going to be. I'm hoping to get this finished in the next couple of days because I want this to be this week's or next week's technically Patreon video, and then it'll be a few weeks after that by the time I get the whole thing edited together for the full like review, because I want to do a full, I mean, I pretty much already told you guys stuff, but I want to do like a fully edited review of the Grex airbrush and all the supplies that I'm using and how to clean there. I'll probably do a separate video on cleaning your airbrush, but we'll get all of those coming up soon. Have I ever watched whatever films Spirited Away and Howl's Movie? No, I have not. I don't even think I've heard of those. Nick says, good stream, everybody. Have a good night, all. Yeah, thank you. Oh, yeah, my back. Now that I'm moving, I'm like, oh, my back is not happy with this right now. I do need to stop. Thanks again for joining. And wow, this is such an odd angle. I wonder, let me see if I can show you what it looks like at the right angle, because this looks so funny. If I turn him the way he goes. There you go. Now you can see the jars at approximately what the angle they actually are. The flowers are all blown out, but you get the idea. Thanks again for joining. I know I'm forgetting something I wanted to tell you guys, or I don't know. I can't remember right now, but I will see you next Wednesday. And if you don't get the notifications, it's pretty much always Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Central Time. If you're not already signed up for my email newsletter, link is in the video description. It's free. And I always remind you that Wednesday I send out an email letting you know what that live stream is going to be with the link and whatever videos went out that week. So that is there. You can also follow me on Instagram. That one, Instagram is probably the one that I'm most consistent on making sure everything's posted. And what videos are coming up, the artwork and stuff. And yeah, I will see you guys next week.